How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, today we're going to be discussing how attention continues to empower Wade Wilson behind bars. Recently, I had a chance to watch a video where they were diving into some prison phone calls that he was making. I believe the phone calls are not recent. They're a few years back, but it shows he has a sense of excitement for what he's done because it's bringing attention to him. I also know that after the murders, he called his father very excited. A lot of people may think he was excited because of the crime he committed, but there are a lot of people that believe that he's excited because of the attention it brings. And I thought that me and my guest today, Russ Hamilton, can explore Wade Wilson's attention-seeking behavior, but more importantly, how we, us, the media, whatnot, could be fueling that. And the scary thing is, guys, if Wade Wilson was still on the street, still able to commit crimes, we could be truly empowering this monster if he is an attention-seeking individual. So with that said, I think it's going to be a great dialogue. We're here to cover a lot. And I'm trying to balance the correctional channel with the people that follow true crime, because I know a lot of people that follow true crime are very supportive to this channel. So I do think that we do have a level of expertise that can help bring about a good audience, but also good engagement from the people that follow true crime. My guest today, Russ, myself, we probably spend more time with individuals who are a danger, who constantly try to manipulate and deceive. So we do definitely have a lot of insight in that, because in most cases, even other correctional officers, people that work in the corrections profession, anyone that works in the corrections profession, I mean, we're probably there more than we're at home. Our interactions with negativity, you know, the constant fear of whatever that world has, whatever that world possesses, we're around it every day, you know, for many hours. So I think that we do provide a level of insight and expertise. And I think that's going to partner very well with the discussion that we have today. Now, let me bring on my boy, Russ. What's up, Russ?
Hey there, Anthony. How's it going, sir?
Good. Russ, you mind introducing yourself to our audience, please?
Sure. My name is Russ Hamilton. I'm a former and now retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I am also a former juvenile senior correctional officer. I started my career at the beginning of all of that back in San Quentin in 1989. I currently work for a company, private company, where we do reentry and rehabilitation work with incarcerated individuals at a jail that I work at, a local county jail, and also a local county probation department. I am also the founder of Keepers of Chaos. Keepers of Chaos with a K is where corrections professionals can gather to get insight, to get training, to get just knowledge and fellowship with each other, with a real emphasis on bolstering the professionality of what it is that we do, which is a job like no other anywhere. And so the challenges that we face just caused me, it's been 7 or 8 years ago now, to come up with this idea, and we're growing by leaps and bounds. We're closing in on 7,000 members. I'd like to see much more. The more members that we get in this or in Tear Talk and other things, the better that we're able to serve our community of corrections professionals and those who are also just interested in what it's like in corrections, or what it's like with some of this true crime things, where we're able to, bring you our knowledge and insight with regards to some of the heinous things that humans can do to each other.
Yes, and I want to thank again those from the true crime audience, because you're bringing in a lot of engagement. It's moving my channel pretty well, so I'm happy about that. Really happy because after doing this since 2012, just to see that there's engagement, it really fuels us. So I do believe with some areas of what we do, our expertise, we may not be true crime experts per se. I mean, it's hard for us to, this isn't full time for us, so it's hard for us to really devote every minute to following a crime. But I think that me, Russ, Joe, a couple of people that I have on, Connie, there could be certain parts of true crime stuff that we feel that is within our comfort zone. So, it may not be, something about the timeline, A, B, C, D, but it could be more just behind the individual. And I think this is a great dialogue because me and Russ have discussed many times before about media and just how it fuels things without realizing it's fueling things. And right now we have the media fueling this monster who's larger than life. Now, even though he's behind the walls, as I said, hypothetically, imagine if he wasn't. But with that said, we know he's behind the walls, but they fuel this person who is basically bigger than life. This monster puts this fear. Now, the funny thing is, if we feel that fear on this extreme when we see him, what about how he feels if he embraces it? So, I mean, think about that, guys. It becomes empowering if that's the image that he would want. And I felt that he kind of does embrace it after listening to some of those phone calls, the way he talks to the woman. I think they call her Kiosk Kristen or something. And then also when he called his father immediately after the crime, very excited. And again, I don't think he was so excited about so much about the crime he did, but the attention it would bring. So me and Russ came up with 5 areas in which the media's attention, or even just our attention, guys, there's people that's throwing love his way. I love him. And if he defines that love by his actions, you're only going to continue to fuel his actions. But basically, we found maybe 5 things here in which the media could be empowering him. So what I'll do is I'll mention the things, and then me and Russ will quickly kind of have a quick little dialogue on each thing. But of course, Russ being the guest, I will mention the thing, give a quick little summary, and have Russ go first, and then I will hopefully compliment what Russ has to say, which I usually do. So I'm going to steal Russ's ideas and just mess around with them a little bit. No, I'm kidding. All right. So the first thing I got is the validation of ego. So the media's attention can give Wade Wilson a sense of power and importance, reinforcing his violent behavior, which got me to thinking about the strangulation. So the choice of strangulation is an intimate and brutal method. And may amplify his desire for control and dominance, especially as the public reacts to the shock value. I know the death of Miss Ruiz, he tried to strangle her, and then he wound up running her over in a car in the broad daylight. And people are like, wow, he must have been crazy to do that. Maybe, or he knew it could have got him a lot of attention because it's extreme, it's in the daylight, and not only tried to strangle her, he ran her over a car and then bragged about what it could have done to her, But Russ, let's do this. Validation of ego.
So, yeah, I think that when we look at validation of ego, there's a lot of these guys out there, some of them on death row, some of them not on death row, some of them, yet to be caught. But with them, some of it can get back to what is going on in the media. We just did a little spot about, Richard Ramirez. And Richard Ramirez, before it was known who he was driving the media narrative for a long time with regards to all of the crimes that he committed. Now, it's hard to say, whether or not he got to a point that because of the media, he was, maybe getting closer and closer to, acting out in more frenzied ways. But I think it's safe to say that, he didn't eschew the media, and he seemed to welcome it. And I think, there's at some point where they know that they're going to get caught. And so they give themselves over to just, well, you know what, maybe I may have to stop what I'm doing, but I'll still get some benefits on the side. I don't think that that's the case with every serial killer out there. There's many that, really do try to, maintain their secrecy, obviously, or we'd see things, or we'd see things in the media where they really sought to try and drive the media narrative. Another one that comes to mind is, Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, he managed to escape from 2 jails, and then, he had the gall to ask, hey, which states are most likely to execute me? And then he went to Florida, knowing that Florida was most likely to execute him. And then he ended up in a frenzied situation, invading a girl's sorority there and killing members inside that. And so I think when we look at those things, those particular individuals really do thrive on one particular aspect of that. And it does validate their ego, it does fuel their ego, and it probably puts them into a position where they might actually kill more often. Not that they would stop, but more often, because the media is their friend in a really morbid sense.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too. You mentioned Ted Bundy. I go as far as saying also John Wayne Gacy, who had one public perspective, and then nice guy, smart guy. One guy was a politician, a clown for children. Ted Bundy also a politician to some extent, kind of get into those political circles. And the thing is, they hid the monster, so only so many people knew who those monsters knew them as monsters. The people that actually were there when they committed their crimes, when they decided to be aggressive. So you have two sides, and you're right. There's some that may not want attention to that side. So what they want to do is they want to hide that side. They don't want it being brought out. But then there are some that want it brought out because they have no shame in that side of who they are. And actually, they've identified themselves with who they are. They connected themselves to that monster. So at the end of the day, there's no shifting of perspective. This is who they are. So when you put them out on the media and basically, to blast without even understanding that, maybe the motive of why this person is doing what they're doing is because they are attention seekers. But with that said, the media blindly puts it out there without realizing they could be reinforcing it. But having said that, when you put it out there, you're putting out an image that they embrace. It's an image that I embrace. It's an image that I want the public to see. And that's kind of definitely something that could validate their ego. Now, again, I mentioned before, thank God Wade Wilson's in prison or in jail right now, or in prison, controlled on death row up at Union. But if he was still out on the streets and we didn't know where he was, the media attention that he's getting, especially after he kills someone, we would only be empowering him to keep on doing it and keep on doing it because he seeks the attention behind the crime. May not even be because he enjoys the crime at any point. It could be because he likes the attention. And I said the reason why we're getting that is because of the phone conversation and then the follow-up, the phone conversation I saw, and then the follow-up when he called his father after the crime. Now, Russ, you touched on to something that I actually did put in. I put in, because you said with Richard Ramirez, but I believe the same thing here as well. I put in manipulation of perception. I got, with the spotlight on him, Wilson may feel he can shape how he's perceived, in this case, being perceived as the monster. He does want that image. So he's not looking to control the narrative to make himself look like a victim. No, he wants to control the narrative and paint himself as a monster, even if that's just putting the cameras on him with the tattoos on his face, just staring deadpan. And then I got using the attention to control the narrative. I don't think it's gained sympathy, more for notoriety, both inside and outside of prison. Would you be able to explore that a little bit? Because you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of these people, they have a narcissistic facet to their personality in which they're going to, leverage the notoriety. They're going to leverage the infamy in a way that, allows them to keep the spotlight on them, whether it's, giving people interviews, whether it's having books written about them, whether it's, trying to get, as many people as possible to send them a little bit of money for their zuzus and wham whams with regards to, canteen or whatever. And so it's just a way for them to maintain the control that they've always sought after there's a change in what happens. A lot of them, know that, once they're caught, that that things are going to change for them, that there's going to be hell to pay. They're potentially going to end up on death row. But they don't necessarily look at that as a negative because they can do that changeover. Now, some of them, because they are so deeply ingrained in being involved in whatever kind of psychosexual fantasies that they have, they want that to go on, and they would rather not get caught. And so there's, I think, two different types that we see here, or at least, two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, and I think the general part here is not really much to explore here. It's just it increases his influence. I mean, not just on the story that he could paint out, but it's more of the public. It increases his influence on the public in regards to the perspective of him. If he wants to create fear, he has control of that. And if there are people that love him because of, I don't know, obviously there's this initial attraction to him, but obviously it has to be some connection to what he's done. Hopefully they're not. I just don't get that part of it, but it does exist. Then he also confirms, by just basically gathering influence with them, because the media is just showing him in basically the way he wants to be perceived. He's controlling that narrative. So, and granted, if the story starts to stray, maybe people start to say, well, maybe he really is a coward behind bars. Maybe those tattoos are just a cover up for a coward inside. Well, he's going to go right back on the news and try to play that monster image. Now, even though I think he likes attention, whether bad or good, I don't think the attention is supposed to affect his ego. So if you gave him attention that was, being a bad guy, even though it's negative to us, he wants that attention. He wants that perspective of fear. But if you start attacking his ego by saying, I'm not even caring, I think he's weak, I'm going after, this image that he'll never make in a jail because he's weak. He's not this monster. He's a woman killer. He's a coward. Now that's not the attention he wants. Right? Would you agree with that, Russ? I mean, the perspective, what would be considered negative in his mind?
Yeah, he has some idea. And I don't pretend to be, an expert on him, never having met him or anything, but he has some idea of what it is that he wants to portray. I think that, most likely, what he is all about is he wants to attract a certain type of female. He wants those females to write him. He wants to be able to write them. He probably is going to try and find a way to visit with some of them and seek whatever kind of cheap thrills, that he can get away with it in his new and more limited contact with society. And so we'll see how that plays out over the oncoming years. But rest assured that the one thing that's going to happen is he's going to have his own select little set of groupies, and they're going to be very attuned to him. And he's not going to want for anything in the way of, canteen and things like that. Probably what I would expect to see is that some of those outside in his circle there may try and leverage their connection with him to some people that, may want to write some books or produce some movies or some features or some docudramas or whatever it is. And seek to, leverage that in a way that, either gives them some type of ego boost or does something for them monetarily. And that's almost always the way it pans out.
Yeah, and guys, I have another one here. It's like an emotional detachment. I think that if he connects to this character of who he wants to be, this monster, I truly believe he connects to that because he wants the attention from it. When the media keeps giving him that attention, it kind of detracts, or at least in his mind, the consequences of what he's done. Because basically he's fueled by giving this attention, the media rewarding him. And I think we'll get to that because there's a psychological reward behind it. That's the next one. But I think in this case here, he stays focused on the attention. The media keeps giving him attention, and therefore he doesn't even get a chance to really look at the consequences of what it is to take two people's lives and how it affects the family. And I'm not saying he would care either way, but the more we give him that attention, the more it does keep him emotionally detached to the consequences of the killing of the two women. Does that make sense, Russ?
Yeah, I think that when we're talking about, I mean, obviously he's a sociopath, and when we look at sociopaths, they just have a complete inability to connect through empathy with other people. Everything that they experience is driven from their own limited perspective on emotions. And so they don't really have a way to express or experience emotions except through the things that they do. They have no idea about about recognizing the sadness of other people or recognizing the fear of other people or any of those things. And so to him, they're just a means to an end. And that end, unfortunately, for at least two women that we know of, was death. And so for him, it was more about the cheap thrills and the thrills that he could vicariously leverage through ending up getting caught. And then, second of all, engaging with the media, who I think a lot of you out there may know what I think of the media, in a way that is just more and more cheap thrills for him. And so I think that's the kind of thing that we're going to see in his immediate future.
Yeah, and guys, for the psychological reward here, this is where it would be extremely dangerous if he was on the streets, because he could be reinforced by the attention, and he would constantly seek the attention. And it's funny because eventually, since he's in prison, he's court, and all this, court, all this stuff will eventually die out. The question is, will he let it die out, or will he just want to go on that high? Because I kind of think attention seeking is a high. And then eventually, it's funny. One day you're the top story, and the next day you're not, and it's cold, and it's just a drop. And the question is he going to, accept that, or is he going to try to seek the attention again? I actually believe that this could be one person here that won't want it to drop. So when the media starts to shift, he may do something foolish, or may do something just to get in the news. And the funny thing, because he's got that attention, he may not have to do much, but I think he's going to want to keep that attention on him. And I was actually thinking of the Green River killer, the one that went dormant for like 30 something years until someone just tried to take credit for his crimes. And then he came in and said, nah, you're not doing that. I mean, he would have never been caught. But this is a guy that wanted the attention, and not just the attention, the ownership of that so bad that he stepped up and admitted to what he did, because he could have been scot-free. But the attention was so important to him to be noted as this person, when he could have just lived a free and happy life with his wife. Because again, he doesn't feel remorse, but he wanted that attention, and he didn't want anybody taking that from him. So you could have a guy here that, and again, if he was on the streets, again, it'd be a worry, is that he wants that attention. So I'm going to be very curious to see when the media starts to shift to another story. What is he going to do? Is he going to try to do something crazy to keep the attention going, or is he going to allow the attention to settle and then just, hopefully disappear onto death row, and then eventually the day comes and he's taken? What's your thoughts
I
on
think
that?
I'm going to tell you. I think, and I don't know. I guess that it's probably not good to try and get into the prediction business. But I do think that with his character and with the excitement and sort of thing that he sees there, I think that he is going to want to keep the limelight on himself. And I will make this prediction though, that I believe that he might actually refuse the help of some of his attorneys to file some appeals on this thing that will keep his name in the news, will bring him closer to execution, and that he might actually seek being executed in order to feel that genuinely cheap thrill from it. Now that remains to be seen, but we certainly saw that in a few cases. We saw that with Ted Bundy for certain. And I just kind of, get the idea that these guys are a little bit similar in that way. I don't think that you can. I don't think that you can, adequately, predict everything that's going to happen with these guys. because there are so many different levels to human interactions and to the human psyche. But it would not surprise me if he ended up trying to fast track himself to being executed.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about that? I actually going to say, like, a lot of people may think many reasons of why he may not put in an appeal. Could also be that in his mind, if he wants to connect to this monster, an appeal of escaping, the death penalty could be a sign of weakness that he believes the public may perceive. So I want to play this monster, and part of that being that monster is bring it on. I'm not afraid of death. Whether he could be or not, we don't know. I mean, this could be totally superficial. But he could be connecting himself so much to this role that he may just choose not to do the appeal, because if he puts in the appeal for the death penalty, put him and say, he's weak, not going to take the consequence of what he's done.
He might also be emotionally ambivalent toward it. He may appreciate the limelight and the attention he gets more than the fear of death itself. And that would be, right in the sociopath's wheelhouse right there. Is truly not fearing death and being more enamored with actually being in the limelight and getting attention from it, and seeking to serve that part of his ego, because he may truly not be afraid of death in any meaningful way that you and I would understand that.
Yeah, I could like to add. I want to add something with that too, just to kind of bring this full round. I think those that seek attention are going to be very superficial, because they're going to sway wherever wherever they can get the attention from. So they never really know who they are, because it's where they feel they can get the attention. So usually attention seekers are going to be very superficial in nature, because the attention is what controls them to some extent. So I honestly believe that when you deal with someone that's an attention seeker, they're superficial. They sell a facade. So at the end of the day, we never really know who they are, because they are going to, post a picture of themselves as determined by where the attention goes. So like I want to pretend to be this killer because that's what got me the attention. That's what I want. It fits well. So, but then again, doesn't mean he's this tough guy in his heart. It just means, because I also think that with the tattoos. I know we didn't have the tattoos. Eventually he did. I think that's also a superficial attempt to paint this picture of this guy that's trying to play the image of this tough guy, because he knows it blends well with the character that he's trying to get out there. The character of fear, this larger than life image of fear that the media is painting. And this goes well. But I also think it's a superficial attempt, because you're advertising it.
Yeah, it's absolutely a superficial attempt. Look at the placement of his tattoos being on his face,
Yeah.
so that the media would see that, not in a place that was hidden, or that could only be meaningful to him, but put in a place of prominence where they would immediately be detected, they would immediately be written about, they would immediately be seen. So, and I see this a lot in my profession. I see, people, decide to put things on their face, and that's always a cry for attention. That's always a way to try and say that, my tattoos mean the most when they're put out there to the public, and regardless of the relatively newfound acceptance of tattoos within society, it's still kind of at least somewhat taboo to put them on your face. And so there's a shock value there. There is an antisocial aspect to it. And so that's why we see that from certain individuals putting them there, is that they have a need. They have a need to get the limelight. They have a need to shock society. They have a need to act out against what society perceives as normal.
Yeah, and once they get the limelight, you're 100% correct. Once they get the limelight, it's how they maintain it. And you know what's funny? Working in prison, you see a lot of tough people that don't need to broadcast it. They have a reputation. So I don't have to go the extra mile to put tattoos on my face and let you know I'm a badass. My actions speak for me. My actions tell you exactly who I am, and I don't have to go around and start telling the world that I'm a badass. My actions I live by my reputation. With this person here, his reputation is a little bit questionable about how badass he is. So what does he have to do? He may have to go the extra mile to promote his badassery. And then that's when you start becoming superficial. That's when people that are really badasses can see right through that. Because I'll tell you something, and Russ, you know this, the true badasses, you don't know they're badasses. You hear about them, but they're not, it's not coming from them. You know, it's
Yeah,
not coming from them.
it is never coming from them. At least I would say, at least in most cases, I've seen some really truly, badasses on death row who were seeking, to actually foster that. But the reasons for that fostering usually weren't about getting their name out there. It was just, they wanted a reputation so that maybe they didn't have to quite work as hard, if you will. I mean, I saw some, true monsters out there, not so much in the sense of being horrible in what they did, although there was an aspect to that, but just that they were really, truly, probably able to kill anybody they wanted, even while they were on death row. People like Tookie Williams, for instance, the founder of the Crips. That guy, I mean, when you saw him and when you handcuffed him, or I should say, when you put leg shackles on his arms because he was so big, you knew that there was always a chance that you could get really hurt during the course of a particular escort like that.
Yeah, and guys, these are people that live on reputation alone. They don't need to make the declaration. And for some people who believe that, he doesn't talk much either, Wade Wilson, he put the tattoo on his face. That's a declaration. That's a picture, speaks 1,000 words. And I'll tell you something, even in the gang realm, some of the highest leaders, the ones that will kill you in a heartbeat, they're not loaded with tats. They're not looking for recognition. Their reputation is there. They don't need to make a declaration. That's why they have, all those young pups that are trying to get, known, maybe they'll be all tied up because they want that recognition. But these high people, they don't. They're very low key and quiet in their ways. So I think for even people that say, well, Wade Wilson's quiet, he put the tattoo. That tattoo was put there for a reason. It was for him to maintain that bad guy image. And I'll tell you something, if he was in jail or prison, he's in prison. If he was in GP in prison, he would be called out on that immediately, especially the swastika. And you would see how quick. And I think somewhere along the line, he knew it would be safe to wear those tattoos because he knew that if he got death row, he would never be put into a GP setting.
Right? I'd say that's absolutely accurate. He wasn't going out there to foster something, according to, your typical skinhead or Aryan Brotherhood doctrine. I mean, all he did was he killed some women by strangling them. He wasn't out there slinging dope and killing people because they were a different race than him. There were no facets to that at all. So when you look at especially like white supremacist ideology, which I've known a lot of white supremacists, by the way, is he doesn't fit any of those guidelines. And if he was put on a yard with a lot of those guys right now, they might seek notoriety by taking him out. And he's not going to have to face that, I don't think. I'm not 100% sure how Florida works, but this is not that.
This is not California either, where they just merge them with GP.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other thing. But they can only be merged with GP facets that are that blend with whatever particular facet they're involved with. They got all of these rapist serial killer guys. They're not going to the yard with a bunch of hardcore neo-Nazis or Crips and Bloods and Mexican mafia. You can bet your bottom dollar on that.
Yeah, and then the last one we kind of touched on, Russ, but I wanted to give it its own category, but we did touch on it throughout the dialogue. A lot of these categories kind of always bleed into each other, but the social identity is what we talked about. You feed the monster, he wants to be that monster. So basically we keep fueling it. And if the public keeps wanting it and he wants that attention, he truly embraces that and tries to maintain it. I wrote a little thing called "The attention from the public solidifies Wilson's identity as a feared or infamous figure, making it harder for him to disconnect from his criminal persona and potentially fueling his desire to maintain that image." So you know what's funny, Russ? I truly do believe he's a sociopath as defined by what he did. I mean, to kill the two women without caring. But I think that it really is fueled by attention. And what I'm wondering is if he no longer gets the attention, I don't expect him to feel remorse. I really don't expect that, because I do believe he is sociopathic to do what he did, especially to seek attention at that level and that be the way you seek it. There's many other ways you could seek it. But when they decided I'm done with this story, this guy is just not worthy of our attention anymore. Who does he become now? Who is he really?
So, when I look at guys like this, there are a lot of labels that we obviously can throw out there, And so earlier, I talked about, just the whole idea about, him being a sociopath, him being a psychopath. One thing I haven't thrown out there yet that I believe he also is he's a psychosexual sadist. Obviously, in the way he killed these women. So there's very little left for him to do, and that's why I was bold enough to make the prediction. But like I say, predictions, everyone can have one. Everyone's welcome to them. But I think that the thing left for him, the real Wade Wilson, is really going to be more about trying to stay relevant, trying to stay in the headlines. There's a limited number of ways for him to do that, and like I said before, I believe that he may, just fail to file some of the appeals. He'll have an automatic appeal before the United States Supreme Court, obviously. I don't know what other avenues are open to him with regards to the state Supreme Court of Florida, but I believe he gets an automatic appeal there, if I'm correct. So then it's going to be up to him. He may try and do some things that keep him in the news. I don't know if Florida allows this. I imagine there's no way they can stop it, but I would believe that he might try and get married, right? That will put him in the news, and it will give him someone to go do his little bits of bidding out there on the streets, perhaps. So that's another potential avenue that might be open to him. But other than that, he's almost at the end right now, unless he wants to get busy doing stupid things that are just going to get him further locked up with regards to misbehavior, attacking people, stabbing people, or things like that. And he'll be reined in very quickly and very sharply if he tries anything like that. I don't think he probably has the heart and the guts to do the things like that. I think he's more likely to stay within the confines of that sadomasochistic, psychosexual killer. And so those things, I believe, are going to end up with him, refusing his appeals, maybe firing multiple attorneys, and probably getting married. That's the way I would imagine it.
Yeah, I agree, Russ. I mean, just on another note too, I've seen people, want to get the attention so bad that they wind up overdoing it. I'm getting the attention now for the murders, and you're right. I'm probably going to get the attention later on if I attack an officer, or I finally get attention later on if I get married, it's some news will follow every little thing. Oh, goes to the infirmary for a nosebleed.
Yeah, I believe he may also do a sit down book with an author where he, actually acknowledges all of his wrongdoing. It would obviously be, kind of stupid legally, but he's not in that camp of acting like us. We should be the last people trying to project what we would do in that situation onto him, because he's obviously way beyond that.
I will guarantee you, anybody that sits and does a book with him, because I definitely think that's going to happen. I'm going to call something right now. I'm going to call it right now. the cover or something is going to have to do something with a monster because he'd want that.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, yeah, it's going to be something with the monster within, something with something that instills fear. May not use the word monster, but he's not going to want an image that
it'll be
makes him look
monster,
slow.
or it will be demons or the devil or something like that.
Something that, yeah, right, further instills the fear. And you know when that's going to happen, Russ? First off, there's going to be a huge interest now. We know that. So obviously he'll jump over it, jump on it. But when it starts to lessen is when the book is going to come out. And then the jail's going to have to, or the prison's going to have to scramble again and make sure we're all good, make sure, you know, because that's what happens. But it's once it starts to die down, the book comes out. And then you find out things you didn't know before. Then it puts it back on the media because someone's going to read a paragraph and say, oh, I didn't know this happened, and then, you know, whatever it is. And so it's funny how we think we know a lot now. Then he does this book, or whoever writes the book for him, paint him as this picture, and then everybody reads the books, and then we just explore certain details, which keeps him in the media just a bit longer. Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, you know, I think that you know, when we do these like this, I think, you know, it's important for you know, for society and the general public as a whole, to understand what it is that we do inside these walls in order to keep them safe. And we go in there and we face these individuals every single day. And, you know, we're the ones that, you know, stand in the divide between the people that are out there on the streets, and those wolves that would attack those people. And so, you know, I just, you know, want people to know that they often see the good works of police officers out there, as they should. They often see the good works of sheriff's deputies and investigators and detectives. But you know what? Take a moment and think about the ones that you don't see: the correctional officer, the correctional deputy, those that work the jails, those that work the prisons. We're there standing watch 24/7 in order that they don't have to, in order that they don't have to take a watch themselves, and in order that they don't ever have to hopefully face these types of killers. And so that would be my message to them. And that, you know, the correctional officers were often unseen, often unthought of, often unrecognized, and yet we show up every single day.
So true. And guys, just in my closing, guys, in corrections, when we deal with the individuals that we deal with, we're constantly asking why. We're constantly looking for motive, and we don't always take the initial mode. We go 6-7 layers deep, and that really gives us insight into people's behavior, why they do it. And just, you know, I think when shows like this, I mean, maybe as we start maybe doing some level of profiling, I remember when I was on CNN a couple years back, and we were doing the Richard Sweat and Matt, the Escape from New York, the Dana Moore, where they got Joyce Mitchell. It was me and an FBI profiler, and Anderson Cooper put me on the, I think it was the whatever. I had more time than the FBI profiler, because, you know, you may ask interviews, whatever, and you may get some great insight, but we walk amongst them. You know, we deal with who they are and not the persona that they want to put out there. Because you can't carry that persona every day, every minute of the day. There's going to be moments where there's cracks, there's vulnerabilities, and guess who's there to see it? We are. So if anybody truly knows what these people are capable of doing on both sides of the extreme, you know, from soft to hard, however you want to look at it, we do, because we walk amongst them every day. As always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify every time I post a video. Stay safe.